Are we ready? Okay. So one of the things I wanted to talk about this morning before we get rolling again with the nuts and bolts of persuasion is an idea that I've been thinking about, which is when you set out to persuade people, you need to understand that people have different aspects of their consciousness. And people will often be stuck in an area of life. One of the challenges as persuaders is we're not persuading people with the claim that we're going to help them make an incremental change in an area of life. For example, we're not saying to the Kobe Bryants of the world, we're going to show you how to be 1% better a basketball player. We're generally speaking taking people in areas of life where they have wreckage and ruin. How to find love. Well, do you teach people who have already found great love how to find love? No. Generally speaking, you're addressing people who have a big problem there. Now, I'm not talking business to business. Set aside business to business. I'm not talking about that. But in areas of life where you're going to persuade people either personally in relationships or face-to-face, or not even face-to-face in relationship, which is a form of persuasion, or you're going to persuade people in print in a big area of life. What are the areas of life where people have ruins, but they also have a lot of charge on? They really want to improve. Well, okay. Sex, right? People have a big button on sex. Is that not true? Yes. Love, so I'll include that with sex, and money. It's true or false? True. Verbal feedback from everyone. Now, you would be hard-pressed if I were to say to you, where do you think people have the bigger button? Sex or money? What do you think? Sex. Who thinks it's money? It could be money, but you would agree with me that those are the two big ones. If you got those two handled, or showed people how to handle one or both, you'd have a good thing going. Now the thing is, and this is what I've learned from training people for 20 years and looking into self-improvement and doing all this stuff. The thing that I've learned is most people, when they set out to change, they're only doing one thing, which is they're looking for something to do in the field. They're looking for a different set of behaviors, a different set of choices when it comes to a certain area of life that will help them improve. For example, if they want to improve their health and have a better proportion of body fat, they will take on a diet that purports to tell them how to do that. If they're going to look money, they'll buy the how to pick stocks in your underpants while you sleep or watch the Playboy channel. You get what I'm talking about? Now here's the thing. I'm sure you would all agree as you sit there listening and become more and more aware of just how interesting this subject is to you. I'm sure that you would all agree that there have been thousands of self-improvement books written. True or false? True. Okay? There have been thousands of books written on how to make more money, how to find love, how to lose weight, right? Am I true or false? So how come there aren't a lot of skinny, rich millionaires running around who are madly in love? Something is wrong. Well, the model of self-improvement that says that if you just get a good technology in the field and follow that, you'll get where you want to go, doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is there's a phenomenon that takes place that when you go to change in an area of life that's had a lot of lack, where you have a lot of reference experiences that don't serve you, a lot of big failures. As most people, I don't see them as failures, but you understand what I'm talking about, right? Yes. The problem is when you go to change in those areas of life, all those old patterns are going to come up. Now, they come up in certain different ways. For example, if you're sitting here in the audience or at home and you've had an area of life that's been significantly challenging, chances are that you've dwelt on those mistakes. How many here in this audience have dwelt on mistakes in an area of life, right? Now here's the thing, mechanically speaking, structurally speaking, when you dwell on mistakes, do you dwell on them in a clear state where you're consciously aware that that's what you're doing? No. Verbal feedback from everyone, please. No. Generally, speaking, when you ruminate on something, you're in an altered state with a strong emotion, usually an emotion of sadness or fear or confusion. A big thing that gets in people's way, by the way, when they make changes, not necessarily fear, but confusion. They're just not sure what to do. You ever have someone who you really love leave you or break up with you? And you don't just have the pain of the breakup and the sadness, but confusion, like, should I try to get him back? Should I let him go? Have you ever had that happen? Yes or no? Yes. Get out of that altered state for a minute, okay? But see, so that aspect of confusion, and one of the ways that confusion works is people have this new direction they'd like to take. I'm not being funny there. They do, what they've envisioned, but then they have all this old stuff coming up in their mind when they go to make the change. Now, the reason or the structure or the function of how that old stuff comes up is, first of all, we keep reinforcing it. When you dwell on mistakes over and over and over again, essentially, you're teaching your brain that that's what you wanted to do in that context, in that area of life. What you repeat is what you rehearse, and what you rehearse is what your brain does. It's what you're programming your brain to do. So the challenge is in an area of life where people have had a lot, and when you're going to persuade people, chances are you're going to be dealing with people who are going to have this phenomena, so you better be aware of it. Which is, in an area of life where people have had a lot of ruins, a lot of challenges, chances are they've been dwelling on that a lot. When they dwell on things over and over again, it amounts to very effective self-programming, by virtue of the fact that, number one, there's a lot of repetitions. When you've dwelt on mistakes in the area of life, how many times have you reviewed those mistakes in your mind? Take a guess. Hundreds of thousands. And often outside of your conscious awareness. My teacher talks about, there's a concept in Buddhism called subtle processing. That there's what you can clearly see going on in your mind. You hear yourself thinking. But underneath that, it's subtle processing, where there's constantly a background hum of things churning. The Buddhists view the unconscious as like this churning stew that's constantly churning and moving. And that those thoughts, that energy bubbles up into your conscious awareness and flowers into a conscious thought. And then it disappears and goes back down into the void. So whether or not that puts you in trance as you think about that now, the thing to understand is that people are always dwelling on stuff. And when you dwell on stuff, it's not because you're a self-sabotager or you hate yourself or you're afraid or you don't believe you have permission from your mom. The function of dwelling on a mistake is what? When you're dwelling on mistakes over and over, what are you attempting to do?
Fix it.
Fix it, resolve it, learn from it. Now, the challenge is that skill of being able to look at mistakes that have a lot of emotional charge, listen to me, without identifying with them, without buying back into them, is not a natural human skills. Without training, I would say no human can do it. In an area of life that's emotionally charged, no human can do it. The natural human tendency is to lock back in on it and identify with it, rather than just look at it objectively and extract out the lesson. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Does that match with your experience of yourself and other people who you've seen are stuck? Yes or no?
Yes.
It matches. So that's the first aspect of it. The other aspect, when you go to change in an area of life, is these things are going to come up not only by virtue of the fact you've dwelt on them and you've told your brain, bring it up and do it, but they also have momentum. They've been activated so many times and you put so much emotional energy and so much winding of that clock, the clock is going to tick. Many years ago when I was teaching, no, not many, like maybe 3 years ago, generally speaking, when I teach speed seduction classes, I have very interesting instructional dreams that morning before I get up to teach. And I remember one morning, this was in London. I'm not making this up, I really did have this dream, that there was a radio playing in my room. So I went to turn the radio off and it kept playing. So I smashed it on the floor and it kept playing. I took the battery out and it kept playing. So I was talking to one of my students in my dream, a kind of nerdy guy, and he said, oh, the reason the radio is playing is the solenoid is doing this with the transistor. It's creating an electric circuit even though there is no battery power. So take out the solenoid. I don't know what the fuck a solenoid is. When I want to fix something, I'll call my nephew Gabe and go, Gabe, get over here. So I took the solenoid out and the radio was still playing. And in my dream, a voice said, the reason the radio is playing is that's what it's always done, and so therefore that's what the radio is going to do. I went, oh. There's a song that goes, we're here because we're here because we're here because we're here. And so another aspect of how those patterns are going to come up, and when they come up, by the way, they do two things. They distort our perception and they drive our behavior. In an area of life where this stuff comes up, it not only drives your behavior, but you look at the world through it. You see what I mean? Yeah. So, and this is a one-to-one correspondence with your own experience, is it not? Yeah. I mean, everyone sitting here is going, yeah, that's absolutely, wow, I never thought of it that way. So, but now you are, didn't you? That's good.